I was invited to my brother's wedding, but my wife was not. And now I know why when I received the invitation to my brother's wedding. I was filled with joy. My brother and I had always been close, and I was looking forward to this important event in his life. But when I saw that my wife's name was not on the invitation, I felt a slight unease. I couldn't understand why she wasn't invited. Katya and I had been together for 5 years, and during that time she had become an integral part of my life. I couldn't imagine going to the wedding without her. I decided to talk to my brother to find out what was going on. On the day I called him, I tried to speak calmly. "Hi, Max. I got your wedding invitation, but I noticed that Katya's name isn't on it. Is this a mistake?" On the other end of the line, I heard confusion. Yeah, it's not a mistake. I just didn't want her to come. She doesn't really fit into our family." I was stunned. "What do you mean? She's my wife." "I know, but you know how it is in our family. We've always been close, and I don't want the wedding to be awkward," he said. And I felt anger boiling inside me. I couldn't believe my brother was saying this about Katya. She had always been kind and caring, and I couldn't understand what could have caused such an attitude. We had discussed how important it was to support each other, and I wasn't going to leave her out. I decided that I would go to the wedding anyway, but with Katya. I couldn't allow my brother to disrespect her like that. "I'm coming, and Katya will be with me," I said, not waiting for his response. When I arrived at the wedding, the atmosphere was festive. Guests were laughing, dancing, and celebrating. I saw many familiar faces, but deep down I felt that something was off. I was looking for my brother to talk to him, but he was busy preparing for the ceremony. Finally, I found him in a corner of the hall, and he looked tense. "Max, I came with Katya," I said, and his face changed. I saw him bite his lip, but he didn't respond. The wedding ceremony began, and I tried to focus on my brother's happiness. But thoughts about Katya not being invited lingered. I understood that this wasn't just a misunderstanding, but something deeper. After the ceremony, I decided to talk to Katya. I found her outside, waiting for me. Her face was sad, and I felt my heart tighten. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "I'm fine, just a little upset. I don't understand why I wasn't invited," she replied. I hugged her and said, "Don't worry, I'm with you. We'll figure this out." We returned to the hall, and I noticed that some guests were looking at us with confusion. I couldn't understand what was happening until I saw one of my brother's aunts whispering to others about how Katya didn't fit into our family. I felt anger surge again. I approached my brother, who was standing with his fiancée and her parents. "Max, I need to talk to you," I said, and he nodded, but his gaze was distant. "Why didn't you invite Katya?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He looked at me, and I saw that he wasn't going to explain. "Because she isn't like us. She's not from our circle," he said, and I felt everything inside me turn upside down. This conversation was a real shock for me. I never thought my brother could think like this. "What do you mean?" "She's my wife, and she deserves to be at this wedding," I replied, trying not to raise my voice. But in his eyes, I saw that he wasn't going to change his mind. "I just didn't want it to be awkward at the wedding. We have a special family, and I don't want anyone to feel out of place," he said. And I realized that he didn't understand how painful this was for me and Katya. I decided that I couldn't stay at this celebration. I couldn't be part of an event where my wife wasn't welcome. I approached Katya and said, "Let's leave. I can't stay here." She looked at me in surprise, but I saw understanding in her eyes. We walked out of the hall, and I felt the tension dissipate. We got into the car, and I turned on the radio, but I wasn't listening to the music. Thoughts of what had happened swirled in my head. When we got home, Katya hugged me. "Thank you for supporting me. I don't want you to lose your family because of me," she said. I sighed and replied, "You shouldn't think that way." You are my family, and I won't let anyone disrespect you. In the following days, I thought a lot about what had happened at the wedding. I felt that my brother didn't understand that family isn't just blood. It's about supporting each other. I decided that I needed to talk to him to clarify the situation. I called Max and suggested we meet. He agreed, but I could see that he was uncomfortable. When we met at a cafe, I noticed that he looked tense. I didn't want you to react like this, he began, but I interrupted him. You don't understand what you did. You not only hurt Katya, but me as well. I can't be part of a family that doesn't accept my wife, I said, feeling anger rise again. I just wanted everything to go smoothly. I didn't want our wedding to be a field for conflicts, he replied. And I felt that he didn't grasp the seriousness of the situation. But you can't decide for me who I should be with. I chose Katya, and she is my family. If you can't accept that, then maybe we need to reconsider our relationship, I said. And in that moment, I realized that I was ready to stand up for my principles, even if it meant losing my brother. Max fell silent, and I saw him contemplating my words. I didn't want to hurt you. I just thought you would understand, he finally said. I can't understand why you don't want to accept my wife. She has never done anything wrong, and I don't understand why you think she's an outsider, I said, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. We sat in silence, and I understood that this was a conversation that could change everything. I didn't know how he would react, but I felt that I had to express everything that was on my mind. I need time to understand. I just wasn't used to the fact that you've changed so much, he said finally. I nodded, understanding that it might take time, but I was willing to wait. In the following weeks, I continued to support Katya and tried to explain to her that this wasn't the end, but rather the beginning of a new stage in our relationship with my brother. I understood that he wouldn't be able to accept everything right away, but I hoped that over time he would see how important Katya was to me. One evening, when Katya and I were having dinner, I received a message from Max. He invited me to meet. I was surprised, but also happy. This was a chance to talk and possibly mend our relationship. When I arrived at the cafe, Max was already waiting for me. He looked more relaxed than the last time. I thought about what you said. I needed time to understand that your family isn't just our parents, but also your wife, he began. I felt relief wash over me. Thank you for coming. I know this was difficult, I replied, and we began to talk about what had happened at the wedding. Max admitted that his fears were related to not wanting conflicts at his wedding. He didn't want me to feel uncomfortable and didn't realize that his actions could hurt. I don't want there to be animosity between us. You're my brother, and I love you. I just didn't know how to do the right thing, he said, and I felt that he was sincere. We discussed our feelings and understood that despite our differences, we would always be brothers. I told him that Katya was a part of my life, and I wasn't going to give her up for anyone else. By the end of the evening, we hugged, and I felt that our connection had been restored. I knew that this was just the beginning, but I was ready to work on our relationship. Several months later, Max and his fiancée invited us to dinner. I was a little nervous, but I understood that this was a step toward restoring our family. When we arrived, I saw that the atmosphere was warm and friendly. Katya and Max's fiancé quickly found common ground, and I noticed them laughing and discussing various things. I was happy to see that my brother was able to open his heart and accept Katya. That evening, we talked a lot, shared memories, and laughed. I realized that sometimes you have to go through difficulties to strengthen relationships. I was grateful that we were able to overcome this barrier and restore trust in each other. Since then, our relationship has only grown stronger. We started meeting more often, and I noticed that Max began to accept Katya as part of our family. I was proud that I was able to stand up for my love and maintain my connection with my brother. In the end, Max's wedding became not just a celebration of his love. but a symbol of the fact that true family accepts each other despite differences. I understood that it is important to be true to your feelings and stand up for those who truly matter in your life.